Welcome to another episode of Rim Shots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I brought my bifocal, so I'm having a little bit of a time here, but we'll figure it out. And you might see the light go off and on, but we'll get her done. I'm here with Matthew Holtby. Where in Ontario you live, Matthew?
I'm in the beautiful countryside of Warkworth, Ontario.
Right, that's in and around like Oshawa area, is it not?
It's about 40 minutes east, but I would say kind of closer to Peterborough, Ontario.
Love Peterborough. I spent a lot of time up there years ago, and I always said if somebody forced me to move back to Ontario, that'd be the place that I would go.
Oh yeah, I hope no one forces you to do anything, but that's cool.
It's been a while. It's been a while. So our mutual friend, actually my Mapex rep and your drummer. What do you call him? I call him Toots, but what do you call him?
Absolutely, it's Toots for the past. We've been in a band in one form or another for 23 years, I think now, but it's Toots for sure.
So I guess you're keeping him then.
He's keeping me for some reason.
Well, and you know what? Good guy. He's been awesome for me with Mapex and stuff, and he pumps you a lot. So without further ado, let's get into that. You have a new album coming out very soon.
It's a single.
Okay.
So there are copious amounts of singles that are slowly but surely being released. But yeah, there's a brand new single coming on Valentine's Day, just because I'm a hopeless romantic.
Well, there you go. And that's good. So, and ladies, he's taken. So, cards and letters don't go that way. So on that note, you're doing what they typically call in the business a waterfall release, which seems to be anybody that's having success in this crazy world of music these days seems to be the strategy with the most traction. Is that something you just kind of decided to do because, or you just by accident? How did you come across this?
I think that there are several, I want to say reasons, but they're kind of a must for us on a few different levels financially. And even just from being in the industry as long, I was a music director for a long time for a radio station as well. And I've been, kind of in the universe in one form or another. And just the way that the game's changed, making a record right now is not only financially, it's not very viable for us, but you kind of said it best before we hopped online here. The attention spans of listeners and fans and friends and family, even sometimes even during conversation, is waning. It's not. Attention spans aren't great and the budget isn't. So we've decided we're going to just focus our best efforts on singles and the odd EP. And I'm going to leave it at that for right now. Yeah.
Well, and I think, like I'm doing that with Michelle Ryder, who I work with. And I just think that you can get people to focus on a song for a period of time, and then you can see when it's going to start to fizzle out. I just think in this day and age, too many songs thrown at people, they don't care and they won't dive into them. And it's not like it used to be, right? Because they'll dig into 70,000 other things on a streaming service, and kind of you get thrown by the wayside.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about the playlist mentality and how much of an honor it is to be even thought of up, next to some of the other artists that we love. So in order to try to do that with a full record, I think is not only ambitious, but I mean, even with bands that I know and love, I mean, I'm very lucky to listen to bands that are really prolific, but some of the big label, acts of our time are you're waiting years. And I would rather be part of the conversation every couple months, or trying to do the odd interview or a publication every couple of months for a song I'm really proud of, as opposed to waiting to do the promotion cycle in the game every couple of years because I can finally afford to do a record. So I'm not doing that.
I'd be interested to get your 2 cents in this, because I find it myself, and I've got my podcast that does pretty well, and I've got some we do some music stuff, and I find I don't want to out and out say that your audience and your local people turn on you, but sometimes they're just kind of like, you know what, I don't want to give Sean any more attention than I have to, so they're on to something else. So do you find that with where you live and in your area and with what you're trying to do, or do people give you support?
It's funny. It kind of changes from town to town, if I'm perfectly honest. Everywhere that I go, I think that there are people in either camp. There are some people that will clap in their front row for you all the time, and they buy the t-shirt and they're genuinely interested in everything you do. And there are a few names that come to mind where it's the polar opposite, but you kind of have to let that drive you a little bit more. I don't know if that sounds like too cheesy, but especially going into this year, I've decided to keep my head down and probably, I would like to think it's not to my own detriment, but I think probably on the forefront of my psyche is to stay positive and not focus on the people that don't clap. And I mean, I'm going to do it anyway, but I think it's fair to say that there are people in either camp. I'm just going to focus on the love, and I won't swear on your podcast, but I'm not worried about it.
And look, man, I get it because there, I was a guy that would go, oh, man, it's only here in my backyard. Nobody else can be feeling it. And then I talk to other people, and they're like, no, you're not special. It happens to me too, right? So
it really does. It really, really does. But again, like, you're going to do it anyway, right? So why worry about those people at all?
I've got a good friend, Jesse Blaze Snyder, who Dee Snyder from Twisted Sister's son.
No way. Wow.
Jesse's a super cool guy. He's a super smart guy. And he says to me all the time that people in our own neighborhood don't validate their own. They wait for somebody else to validate them, and then they come back and revalidate them and feel like they've discovered them. And Sarah McLaughlin, who was from Halifax, comes to mind because nobody really gave her the time of day. And then she moves to Vancouver, and she's Halifax's own now, and she's been in Vancouver for 35 years. So, again, I like what you're saying about just focusing on the ones that you can worry about, and the other ones, if you win them over, fine.
Yeah, I have to tell you that my very favorite songwriter is a guy who's approaching his 70s in a band called Guided by Voices. And, he didn't sign his first deal until he was 40. He was a school teacher. They put out 4 records a year now. They're the most prolific band making music, in my humble opinion. Mm-hmm. And they were told for years and years and years, that you guys ain't shit. You should pack it in. But I mean, the longevity and the career and the songs stand the test of time. So therefore, like I keep saying, I would be doing this whether anyone was there anyway. I've already been doing it for, a couple decades, and finally things are feeling like they're really starting to gel at the, I'll be 45 this year, and it's finally working.
And I like that because I'm very big on, I play for myself, and I never get worried about who's in the room. And, if I'm having a good night, you don't need to tell me, because I know. If I'm having a bad night, you don't need to tell me, because I know. But I never get too worried about who's in the room. I do it for myself, and it just has worked. I mean, it's taken me a while to get there, because let's face it, sometimes when you get people that are scowling at you with their arms folded, it can get a little bit long in the tooth. But it's good to hear that we kind of have a similar way of looking at things. And I think in the music business, man, you almost have to cancel the musicians out, because they're probably not the ones that are going to buy your stuff anyway.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a philosophy that I've kind of adopted as well, and some of that has to do with, I've always been a yes man, always trying to be a people pleaser and doing whatever I can. Like, how dare I ruffle anyone's feathers or anything? But going into this year, especially, like, I've had to kind of say no to a few things as well, like even just knowing what the appropriate room is. And I've kind of adopted, I won't play in a room with TVs on. I don't want to smell your buffalo wings while you watch the game. And, while I try, like, you know what I mean? I think it's just setting the standard so you're not going to be disappointed, and people that are there in the room actually are there for the music. And that's something that, they've always talked about, your 10,000 hours. But I'm like, if I'm going to be away from my children and anything, I just drove 3 hours, or 2.5 hours last week for $300, but it was a captivated room, and I left there feeling like that was well worth it. You got to be able to set a standard for yourself and just know that's like you're doing it for the right reason. Even podcasts, interviews, all this stuff. I love talking about music, this, and I know that you're one of those guys that's doing it for the right reason. And why waste your time or energy on people that don't care?
Well, and I mean, this one's long overdue, because I've been dealing with Craig now for 2 years. Awesome. But I really try to, and it's funny because, some people are like, oh, he's just doing it for his own selfish. Well, let's call it what it is. I'm building a brand. However,
Yeah.
I just hit interview number 700 yesterday. I'd be pretty stupid.
Wow.
Yeah, episode 700. I'd
Oh
be
my
pretty
God.
stupid.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And we're not even 5 years, but I'd be pretty dumb to not try to share the love. It's like, man, he's done it 700 times and he's not trying to help anybody else out. I mean, how dumb does that sound?
Well, that is the one thing that I can attest to, is that Toots had said, this is a guy that really just wants to help anybody and everybody that he can within not only, music. I know that you kind of cross a whole bunch of different boundaries in terms of the show. I actually, because I've been a radio host and I've been a podcast host before, I wanted to ask you real quick, what would you say is kind of your bucket list interview? Have you got to, obviously not this one, but
no, not true. Because here's the one thing, and I won't name a name, but there's a certain person that hosts a very successful podcast that I find when they're interviewing somebody that they deem is super, super, super next level, they treat them one way, and when somebody that isn't, they treat them another. And I've never wanted to do that because I don't know who I'm talking to that's going to go off and do something super significant. So I try to treat everybody the same way. I try to make sure that I'm not like Chris Farley in that Saturday Night Live skit with
Paul McCartney.
Paul McCartney, right?
That was awesome.
But bucket list interview, I mean, I'd love to interview Peter Criss from Kiss. He was a hero of mine. Got close a couple times. But I got to tell you, I've interviewed a couple bucket list guys already. Like I interviewed JJ French from Twisted Sister yesterday.
Oh yeah, awesome.
I talked with Rich Redmond from Jason Aldean yesterday.
That's cool.
Yeah, Eddie Bayers, who, one of probably the number one recorded country drummer in the history of drums. So Peter Criss is probably it, and we'll see what happens.
Toots can attest to this as well, that he was in the room because I guess this is more of a drummer's focused podcast, or I'm sure that there's more interest in that department. But when I was in radio, Chad Smith came in and sat with me and like kind of took over not only the interview, but the airwaves for well over an hour as we smoked cigarettes and drank Heineken in the studio. And my program, or not even the program director, the owner of the station was like, do whatever you'd like. He's a Red Hot Chili Pepper.
Right. Well, yeah. And it's really funny because I've had the pleasure of interviewing all kinds of people, everybody from like the newbie to the AAA lister, and I've only really had problems with people that live, within a 15 to 20 kilometer radius of me. Yeah, go figure, right? But
really, yeah, that's
just the way that it is. But here's the thing, Matthew. I was in a band playing 100 plus shows a year, and 2020 happens. We know what happened there, and it's like I was doing a minor sports show, and it's like, well, I'll go just start interviewing some of my musician friends, and almost 5 years later, I didn't go, man, it's my goal to be a podcast host. It just kind of happened. But one of the things that I did want to have it be is just like this, like we're sitting around the bar chewing fat, and we're not scripted, and promoting great folks such as yourself. So it's worked out, and appreciate you being here.
Man, I'm honored. Thank you very much.
So Toots tells me, you guys play quite a bit, but now you're telling me you're being selective, which I think is great because I think you have to be selective. Does it get harder and harder to find rooms to play, or do you guys have a nice little kind of circuit that you keep going back to?
I think that there's two models that we've kind of we'll do a full band thing, and then I'll do either a duo or a solo thing as well. I love to rock out, and we've kind of dubbed 2025 as the year of the electric guitar. I've had a lot of very I wouldn't say somber, but a little bit more like thoughtful songwriting with an acoustic guitar and piano arrangements and things like that in the last year or so. So with the full band thing, we've kind of said like, let's plug in and sorry, I have a puppy and that's all right. Crazy. And she got a really bad haircut today, so she's a little upset. But so for full band stuff is definitely more selective. I think that we've put in probably 30 applications to try to do some festivals this summer and try to stay busy just playing for different people. And then when it comes to solo stuff, there's something really great. And because I used to always say that I work from home, but like I live where I work, meaning not only do I work out of this, this office and this studio every day talking into a microphone, but band rehearsals are here. Recordings happen here because I've moved the studio to the basement here as well, which is great. But there's something really kind of I have like a romantic vision of putting my acoustic guitar in the truck and driving for a couple hours and showing up alone and being nervous and, red in the cheeks when I get there, and then having, the faith in humanity restore the comfort, because it's a little nerve wracking walking into a new room. So I love having the camaraderie of the full band thing, rocking out with the guys, and then I'll change it up and play a completely different room and try to do something a little bit that, that I wouldn't do with the band when I'm solo, if that answers your question.
It does, and it's a great answer, because probably the only time now that I get nervous is a new room, and it's not because I think the band's going to tank or whatever. You just don't know who you're dealing with, and you don't know what their reaction is going to be. And fortunately, one of the bands is not. You probably can't hear them, but they're downstairs rehearsing. But we've got a singer that it doesn't matter what room she walks into, she always wins them over, which is great. But I've been in other situations where it's like, uh-oh, you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
So
I'm the I am the
well, no, and I get it, and it's a real thing. But I think too that that's one of the things that keeps music interesting.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're all still doing it at our age or whatever. I just said this to my wife today. Like, to some of my friends that don't have the creative outlet or are in a funk and they're literally, trying to find whatever the next contracting job is or whatever, and they're just navigating life without having that outlet. I don't know that I'd ever be able to do that, let alone the fact that, like I said, I'm a dad, and I've been married for almost 20 years and stuff. So it's like, I have to have that thing. In fact, the other night I just said to my wife, like, I'm leaving for a couple hours. Where are you going? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm getting out of here.
Again, man, that's the creative artist thing. I mean, to your point, I say this quite a bit, even on the worst gig. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Didn't go ahead. We're having fun and whatever, and a lot of people can't claim that. So that's a good point.
Absolutely, man.
I don't like to do this, but I have to sometimes, because if I have a guest and some of my viewers or listeners haven't heard them, I'd say, give me a comparable of who you might be, so that my listeners could go, oh, okay, I like that, I want to go check it out.
That's cool. I'd like to think that I kind of write songs like Tom Petty almost. I wouldn't say that my voice is anywhere near that, but I don't play complicated things. I normally have a melody and then it turns into a DAG or a EA minor or something.
Yeah.
So the songwriting is definitely not complicated or proggy or anything like that. I would like to think that I'm a healthy mix between, something like, Tom Petty. Do you guys know Blue Rodeo out there?
Yeah.
Wilco. Nothing too damn fancy, that's for sure. But I love rock and roll, and I'm not necessarily one to try to make anybody cry or anything like that. I'm a storyteller. That's the other thing too. I don't write very autobiographically. I write about a lot of things that I see happening with my friends and my family, and in the bio, I always write, love, loss, and redemption. I'm always about second chances and things like that. And I've seen a lot of people mess up, and I've been one of them. But yeah, I just try to write good stories with hooks. Try to write a good hook, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard the tunes, that I was going to say kind of a little bit of a Blue Rodeo vibe. It's kind of the Americana, Canadiana sort of, vibe, and which is great, because that's music that resonates with people that, they love the stories. They want to hear the stories. And, so I think that's very cool, because, some people, and it's not a rip, but hey, we just get the next line to rhyme with the one before it, right? That's about as deep as their songwriting goes. So
yeah, there's a little bit of that too. Yeah. But I mean, like I said, but there are definitely stories within, my wife. Sometimes my wife has to remind me, like, tell people this song's not about you. Like the song is like, I messed up and she found out. It's like, I promise I didn't. Well, I do, but I didn't.
It's funny you mentioned that, because we were doing one of Michelle's songs, and I hadn't really paid attention to the lyrics when, I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then we were sound checking it one day. I could hear her very, very plain as day. And I was like, did you write that song about me? Because if you did, I really need to sort of, I need to correct a few things, but it was just, it wasn't. It was just kind of a random thing. So I
And
get what you're saying.
leave it to a musician to think that it was about us, right?
Always, man. And a drummer. I mean, right?
Someone should write a song about being vain like that, maybe.
Yes. So you get this one coming out on the 14th, which is really, I mean, it sounds a lot of, a number of days away, but we're talking a week. What's this banger called?
The song's called "Give Me a Reason," and it's 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and like kind of sets the standard for what we want to do right now, which I'm really excited about. Yeah.
Well, that's good. So you have a theme, and you have a this will be the first of, I guess, how many do you plan on putting on?
Man, there's a lot of songs written right now, so I think we're gonna like try to stay on the cycle of at least a new single every 2 months, 2 to 3 months at max. But then in between the releases of the full band stuff, I've got some other kind of acoustic-y and trying to do like maybe, I wouldn't say experimental, but not as worried about the full production kind of thing. A little weirder might be okay in terms of like an acoustic release as well.
Sure. I mean, one of the things that we happened on, it was my producer, Jason McCorson, that produces the show. So we had this idea, Michelle puts her songs out, but she has a bunch of songs that she really liked. So we bought the rights to them, and she was going to record them as a separate album. Jason was doing reels, so like between 30 and 39, 40 seconds. And lo and behold, she does a version of Carrie Underwood's "Before He Cheats," and it's probably up to close to 300,000 views of a 39-second thing, right?
Oh, wow.
And there you go. That's people's attention spans. But every day, I post it and I keep saying, okay, when it goes below 1,000, and I've been saying that every day since August, but it's the attention spans of people, right?
Yeah, totally. I did a cover of Patrick Swayze's "She's Like the Wind."
Nice.
Just because a friend wanted an 80s song for her party. So I played it, and then I had my kids record me doing it in the basement. And it's like, now that seems to be the one that's getting a little bit of traction. I'm like, but I didn't write that one. But
it doesn't matter. You can't go wrong with a friggin' Patrick Swayze song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right? Yeah, man.
Yeah. So do you have plans, I guess, after this waterfall strategy, which again, I can definitely support and get behind because I've seen it work. Do you have plans once you have a few of them out to maybe put an EP or a full album together at the end of it?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is not only get a little. I hate talking this kind of business, but having a better game plan in terms of the social media rollout and just trying to get into as many people's faces, whether it's on their phone or in that kind of spectrum. But I think the game plan is going to be to try to raise some funds by just doing more shows and trying to grow organically in terms of doing things like this. I guess just trying to get to know people, and as opposed, how easy it is right now. You can like log off here right now and go buy a bunch of spins and play the game. I think like integrity is the key word to try to make sure that I'm doing it legit. So more shows, more conversations, and goddamn, more songs.
Well, I had a post. Somebody sent me a thing, and I posted it on my socials today, and people went bananas, and I totally missed the point. But it was basically Jay-Z spent millions to have that Beyonce tune pushed, like millions. My point was, I've worked with a couple artists who don't spend anything in terms of bots and buy plays, and we're taken down off streaming services for fraudulent streams. Yet there's a guy that can spend millions and it's fine. And the point of the post was there are two sets of rules, like it or lump it. That's the business we're in.
Yeah.
I like what you're saying with your plan. What's success look like to you? I mean, basically knowing you're going to have to try harder than, the guy that's already a major star, but that's the game.
Yeah. I think the dream would be just to try to get on some decent bills to play with other artists that we love and respect. And, there's been a little bit of that, but listen, I mean, like I said, I don't have illusions of grandeur here. I'm in my mid 40s and really waiting for the next, to write the next better song in my catalog. So I think success to me is the song first, and then the audience is kind of like the silver lining, really, right? It's like if you can play to a bigger room, and people that's the other thing too, is that I would love to just play for people that love to go out and see live music as opposed to, having to having to be in the room. It's You know what the difference is when you're there and you're in a room full of people that are engaged. That is success to me. It's like I'm gonna win these people over, but man, they really want to be here, and this is the right environment, because there's nothing like playing to a room full of people that could care less. And
No, I agree. And I work with, I have people call me all the time. Can you help me? Yeah, no problem. The first question I ask them is, "What are your goals?"
right,
And a lot of them are, "I don't know." And I go, "Okay, we'll come back when you have them, because if you don't know, I don't know. I know what I can do to get you streams. I know what I can do to get you in front of people. I know what I can do to help you out in other ways. But if none of that is what you want to do, then those are my goals, not your goals."
right, yeah. And you can't dictate to somebody what their goals should be if it's not there. It's
Nope. And that's
there's
where they
only
need
so
to
much.
start. Very few of them do. And I mean, it sounds like you guys, and goals are obviously, it's like landing an airplane, right? They're constantly changing and adjusting and readjusting and stuff. So it sounds like you
Absolutely.
guys are on it. Okay. So we're coming down to that wire point where everybody's kind of snoozing off and going, we're going to go over to Toots feed now because
he's a lot more fun than I am. I get it, everyone.
no, he's a good fellow, but we already established that. Enough airtime for Toots. But Mapex drums, kids, go get them. Where do my folks find out about Matthew and your tunes and more about you and getting your music and supporting you?
MatthewHoltbymusic.com, but on all of the socials, Matthew Holtby Music, and on all the streaming services, it's just Matthew Holtby. And I just would much rather, if the time comes, to meet in person and a handshake, and and get to know each other from that standpoint, obviously. But yeah, I mean, there's some stuff on YouTube and all the other necessary evils of the digital age.
The
But
game
yeah,
we must play.
we're out there. Yeah, absolutely, brother.
Well, I want to thank you for your time, man. This is great. Like you say, long overdue. Let's stay in touch. Well, how can we not stay in touch? We have a mutual friend, and I'll keep an eye on what you guys have on the go for the rest of the year.
Amen. And I will spread the gospel. Thank you so much.
Peace.
Peace, brother.